Entitled neighbor. I had an issue with the people renting the home next door. They were trying to tell me I couldn't trim their tree that was hanging over the property line. I hired an arborist who received permission from their property management company, and he trimmed all the branches that were coming across the property line. He did check to see if the property management company wanted to pay half to trim the whole tree, but they declined. So the neighbors and I had the tree issue. During that dust-up, the husband told me that he doesn't care about our HOA rules. When their backyard became a fire hazard filled with 5-foot 9-inch tall weeds that were dead in color, I snitched to city code enforcement, especially after one of my security camera installers saw their back lawn while climbing a ladder to install one of my Al Pro cameras. The installer said something to me about the lawn and was like, WTF? Friends on Reddit and the Nextdoor app told me as the 4th of July approaches in California, one rogue firework could set it all on fire, meaning my house and newly shared fencing with them will go up in flames. The neighbor behind them had purchased new shared fencing too. I'm glad I snitched. The family was cited by the city. The husband bams on my door and rings the doorbell a week later. He's filming the interaction on his phone, probably to protect himself. I didn't answer my door because I never answer it. I could hear him calling me a piece of shit to the neighbor next door for reporting him via my doorbell camera. He tells the neighbor that I chopped down his tree and a few other things. The neighbor tells him you need to be careful and to come and talk to him. My buddy at the police department said don't engage. Around 2 weeks later, I see the husband outside on video camera trying to grab his trash can and dart into the house. I tried yelling at him last week, but he acted like he didn't hear me. I run outside and tell him to knock on my door now. I was wrapping up my hands. I told him you were talking trash earlier. Let's hit the repeat button. I yelled to him from my property to don't ever knock on my door again. If he does, he is going to mess around and find out. I call him a hillbilly as I return to my garage. He filmed the whole interaction, and so did my security cameras. I made sure not to threaten him or get in his face. I remained on my property. I was sending a message. The neighbor waits until I go inside. Then he walks along the sidewalk in front of my house to talk with the neighbor he had called me a POS to a few weeks earlier. I hear him discussing potentially talking to a lawyer. The neighbor said, Tank, my nickname, had his gloves on waiting for you. I suggest you avoid him. Stay inside your fence. I grew up in Gary, Indiana, which is next door to Chicago. I got into a lot of fights growing up because that was life until we moved to a military base in Texas. I learned that I didn't need to fight anymore. Despite being in the Air Force for 22 years serving and retiring, yet that side of me from Gary still exists. Although, I never raised a fist to anyone in the military. The level of disrespect by this neighbor was unbearable in our beautiful HOA. Granted, they'll be forced to move out in 2 months. They can't afford the rent or utilities.